Welcome to Gapology Radio with your hosts Mark Tinas and Brian Brokoff, authors of the leadership development books Gapology, IMBAR, and Speed of Purpose. At Gapology, our purpose is to help leaders achieve their greatest potential. To learn more about our groundbreaking books and training services, visit our website, gapology.org.
Hey everybody, welcome to Gapology Radio. Remember that we have training options for most business needs. We have our online video-based learning course on udemy.com. We have our live in-person workshops that we custom tailor to your business needs and timeframes. And we have our 1-hour coaching sessions where we lead your team through lively discussions on many business topics, looking at them through the lens of Gapology, IMBAR, and Speed of Purpose. For more details on all those options, head on over to our website, gapology.org, for more information. And as for tonight, we're continuing our culture series and discussing ways to create a culture of communication. Communication is one of those fundamental skills winning leaders possess, so it's critical to get really good at it to improve your results and team dynamics. So let's go ahead and get the show rolling with Mark Tinas. Hey Mark, how are you doing?
Good, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, although I don't know how well I'm going to be able to communicate on our podcast talking about communicating.
Because?
All right, backstory. So my son, Jesse, my oldest son, and his wife are staying with us for a couple months while they're moving to Kansas City. And so he is a wonderful cook, especially a grill master. And he made the hottest hot wings tonight. I think my face melted off. My lips are gone. It's going to be a struggle for me tonight.
Thanks for the invite, though. I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah. Oh, man, they were so good. But yeah, steaming hot. So, but loved them.
That's great.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about communication. So I thought this was an interesting topic when we talk about a culture of communication. So as with all of these topics that we've discussed with culture, it's important to understand what we do as leaders to create these cultures, within our organizations. One thing that occurred to me as I was melting my face off tonight is that we need to also consider how our team reacts with these different pieces. So as we're talking about communication, I just would like the listeners to consider how you can also get your team to communicate using these tips. Provide guidance to them on some of these things. So I just wanted to kind of preface it with that, and then we'll kind of touch on it as we go through.
No, I like that, and I think if the leader models, effective communication and does it in a way that others learn from it. Mm-hmm. They become the teacher and the culture, starts coming together. So I like that.
Yeah. When we talk about creating a teaching organization in Gapology, we talk about that. And this is really a key element to that.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
So what kind of tips do you have for us?
Well, so what the process we're going to share with you tonight came from Gapology, came from our work in Gapology and our extensive observations of top performing teams, interviews with those groups and working with those groups. And we found that Gapology is actually a form of communication, which we didn't know going in. And if you simply follow the KINA, the knowledge, importance, and action, the flow of Gapology, you can create very effective communication, which again can be taught and shared with teams. So it's pretty amazing. So what do you think if I go down that road, Brian?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect flow.
Yeah. So let me walk you through it. The amazing thing for those of you that lead teams is that this form of communication, this process, you'll find it fairly easy, but it works for spoken communication. So if you were going to deliver a message to your team in person or on video, it works in written communication, and it's often lost there. So think about your emails. If you were to format them differently, your texts, could they actually create action through communication? And then if you were doing some sort of formal video that would be legacy that many people would view over time, you can actually format your communication in that video in this method. We have found that this works with sales teams, with operators. We shared it with pastors of Christian churches, and it was incredibly effective for them in terms of formatting the communication of their sermon. So it really works for leaders to create action in teams through effective communication. And over time, it creates a culture of communication. I think when you hear it, you're going to find that it's very logical, but it's not necessarily how we do it. In fact, I would say 90% of the time, we do not communicate in this manner. And by changing to this format, you actually close gaps in dramatic fashion.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to consider, first of all, the message that you're delivering and the vehicle in which you're delivering it, or the method in which you're delivering it, because I think there's power to each different method of delivery. So if you're talking about spoken or written or video, I think it's important to identify what is the most effective method of delivery and then use that as appropriate.
Yeah, no, I like that. What's your plan based on what you need to deliver here? In many cases, it's all of those. It's all of those. You may need to do multiple forms of communication in order to deliver the message. You may tell the team about it, you may create a video about it, and you may write about it as well. So determine what's going to work. But in either case, they all follow this same flow, which we'll share with you now.
Yep, sounds good.
So the first step, if you're looking at it, it's really a 3-step process. The first step is, and let's assume you're a leader talking to a team in this case, tell them what they need to know. So an example would be we've got a new process we're going to roll out, a new procedure we're going to roll out. And so you are in this first step walking the team through this new process, giving them the facts, giving them the details about the process. Potentially, again, if you're in person, answering their questions, ensuring that they understand what it is that the new process entails. The key to this communication process is you don't leave this step 1 until it's complete. So you've told them what they need to know. We learned in the habit ladder that most communication, most training ends with communication. And so this is that first step that lays the groundwork for everything else. So this one needs to be done well.
Yeah, and I think along with this is really leveraging that habit ladder. So also validating understanding, validating agreement, those pieces of the habit ladder. I think that's important here. So it's just not a one-way communication that happens at this step.
Yeah, no, absolutely the case. And the habit ladder is in Gapology. It's one of the most popular ladders that we use in there, and it's used by leaders to create habit, and it's quite effective. So that's where that comes from. So this new process that we're rolling out, the team now knows what it is. They know what's going to change. So you've sort of laid a foundation for the remainder of the communication and the other 2 steps. And this is a 3-step process. So if you're looking at Gapology, we have closed the knowledge gap. So we're at K and we've closed K. And you want to make sure that you've done that before you move on, because that's significant. And as we've referenced in Gapology, knowledge gap is often the biggest gap. So you need to make sure that that knowledge gap is closed. They have the facts. They know the new procedure, or they've got an understanding of it. So the next step is to tell them why it matters. This is big. You may be tying it to your purpose. You may be tying it to a financial impact that this will have, an efficiency impact, whatever the why is. You're now giving them the why. So they know what it is, and now they're really getting sold on it. They're buying into it. They're understanding it, and their understanding of it is becoming somewhat tied even to emotion, because they're getting how this makes things better. And this one's big. You want to take your time with this one, but it is absolutely critical, and it is critical that it go after the tell them what they need to know. So oftentimes leaders get excited about a new process and they tell them the why first. And the challenge with that is they don't have a context for the why.
Yeah.
So they don't really connect with the why, and then they're not listening to the what, and it doesn't work. So you tell them what they need to know, and then you tell them why it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So three things that occurred to me there. That last point, absolutely. That's where you, as a leader, can really instill fear into your team before you've really even delivered the message about what they need to know. If you start explaining the reasons and all this stuff behind the scenes, people get, they don't understand it. So that's where fear gets built up. And then that fear prevents people from really being open and listening to the first piece. The other thing there that occurred to me, tying again back to the habit ladder, is this is really the agreement step of the habit ladder. So the why it matters, that's how you're building agreement. I will say that culture, we're talking about creating a culture of communication. Culture can get really derailed here. If we're not good at explaining why something matters, especially when we're talking about rolling out a new initiative or something like that, something big, culture can really, really get derailed here.
Yeah, great points. The other thing that comes into play here, if you go out of order, is you create a significant DABA impact.
Yeah.
And DABA is this denial, anger process of change that kicks in to where you've created a denial and anger cycle before they even understand what it is. So you got to be very careful about your order here. And DABA is explained in detail in Gapology as well. It's something leaders need to understand when they communicate a process change, a procedural change, like what we're talking about here, because it's human nature and it will happen. But by telling them what they need to know, now they understand this new process. Telling them why it matters, now they're buying in. You're overcoming the DABA, which has a wall. We'll get into that more separately, but it's a significant obstacle that you can create if you don't follow the right process. Any DABA comments?
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. And that wall that you're talking about. So, denial and then anger, and there's kind of a wall there that people get stuck at. And that's where culture gets derailed. That's where fear gets built up, and trying to get them over that wall to the bargaining stage, which is that next stage in DABA. That's really the goal is then you get people starting to understand that the change is actually happening, and so forth until they get to the agreement stage. So that flow, it's very much like the grief model that, a lot of people know, but this is really specifically targeted to change. And that's why it's critical that we do this in a systematic process for big initiatives, big rollouts. But I think also with just general communication. So even if it's not a big rollout, if it's just general direction that you're giving your team on a weekly basis, think about it through these steps. Tell them what they need to know and tell them why it matters. Starting with those two steps will help to clarify and give more impact to your leadership communication.
Absolutely. It literally works for simple communication, simple changes, rather insignificant things, and it works for the big stuff. And you do not want to, through your communication, destroy the culture that we're trying to create here by creating a DABA wall, a denial and anger wall.
Yep.
So we've told them what they need to know so they understand this new process. We've told them why it matters, how we've tied it to the purpose. We've explained how it impacts results, et cetera. So if we've done this correctly, they are well on their way to being fully bought in. They're over the DABA wall if one had occurred. And the third and final step to this, in this 3-step process, is to tell them what they need to do. So you're looking right at them and saying, okay, here's what you need to do. It's a bit of a request, and it can be formed that way, but it also is very serious and it's very action oriented. Here's what you need to do. Here's what I need from you. And the leader needs to be very clear. They need to talk about how this is measured so that everyone understands there's measures to, this new process. You then tie it again to their specific role, making their role important. Their role matters. We've got to deliver this. And again, you can tie it back to purpose. You can tie it back to results. You can tie it back to the delivery of this new process. And this really brings it home. So what they need to know, why it matters, and what they need to do, they're important. We can't do this without you. That creates a culture of communication, again, that they can learn from, and they can begin emulating in their communication as well.
Yeah, I think people, they want to know what their part is in any new initiative specifically, but even within anybody's role, they want to know what their part is. What part are they playing in it? Laying out what they need to do provides that clarity. Again, it minimizes any fear. It solidifies any expectations. And again, tying it back to the habit ladder, I was thinking about this as well. The habit ladder is laid out just like Gapology. Practice is the next step. This is what they need to do. They need to start doing it. They need to start practicing it, getting better at it, and developing a habit. And I think that's where you're going to really solidify that culture of action with your team.
Yeah, it brings it home. Yeah, you're right. The habit ladder and these 3 steps of creating a culture of communication, which create a culture of action, very much tie together. And at the end of the day, they create high performance teams. This is where we discovered these. They were alive and well in high performance teams. The top 10% of performers were doing this. And that's where we first saw it and learned to understand it and spread it and teach it to everyone else. So that's a culture of communication.
Yeah. I think, and back to what we talked about at the very beginning, consider these tips for yourself as leader, but also consider these tips for how you're going to teach your team how to communicate effectively with you and also amongst each other as well. Because especially if they're emerging leaders or people that are in kind of that transitional state before they're, moving into a leadership role, they need to know this stuff to become effective leaders, become winning leaders, and, teach them how to create this stuff, teach them how to grow, how to support others in it, how to recognize and course correct as they're going along, continue to do it for yourself, but also to teach others.
Well said.
Well, this was good, Mark.
Brian.
Yep. I think this is good. I think we can leave it right there.
Well, hopefully you recover from the chicken wings.
Yeah. I need to go find some milk or something to drink here. But all right. Well, you have a great week.
You too. Tell Jesse welcome home.
I will. Definitely. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, that'll do it from here. For more information on Gapology, IMBAR, or Speed of Purpose, head on over to our website, gapology.org. Everyone have a fantastic week. Talk to you soon.
This has been a Gapology Institute production. Visit us at gapology.org.